Okay, folks, so we're going to start playing around with GIS data, finding it, learning about it, downloading it, messing with it, and so on. So I'm going to take you through a handful of sources available on the web, places where you can go look for this stuff. One thing I want to stress right off the bat is that in this class, you should never, ever have to pay for any data. Okay, and that happens sometimes. It seems to be a little better these days than years ago when I first started out with this stuff. But the stuff we're going to be looking at here today, it's all made by federal, state, or local governments. Your tax dollars have already paid for this stuff, and you should never have to repay for it or pay for it twice. You'll get sometimes these companies that pop up, they repackage this stuff, they try to sell it to you. Don't do it. And as you're going through, and if you're working on your own project or whatever, and you find something where someone's trying to charge you money, feel free to, shoot me an email or something, and then we can talk about it, just to make sure you would want to pay for whatever reason. But typically what I've seen is people are ripping you off with that stuff. So I'm going to point you to some free sources. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, the first thing we're going to do, because we're going to be downloading stuff, is I want you to set up your workspace, that place in which you're going to be working. So like we did last time, I'm going to keep stuff in the Documents folder. So I'll double click there. And remember, this is just that File Explorer. So if you come, it's hidden here, but you can hit the Windows E or go to that little File Explorer thing. That's how we get in here. I'm going to go into ArcGIS. There's that South America folder from before. I'm going to right click once. I'm going to go to New and hit Folder. I'm going to write data underscore exercise. I'm not going to leave it as just data because that can be a kind of a misleading thing. I want this to be specific to the exercise work we're doing this week. So call it something along these lines, just so in future weeks you don't get confused by this, and this way you also know where you put everything as we download stuff and look for it and so on. Okay, so we'll name that there, and now we have a place to save our data. Okay, back here, in fact, I'll expand my web browser. I've already pulled up a few things that I want to show you today. And I'll post these links into the file section so you easily have them in like a Word document. So you can just click on this stuff and you have it as a resource. But I have this stuff up now just to kind of quickly go through it. Now this first tab, it's the national map, and it's part of the USGS, the United States Geologic Survey. They do a lot of great mapping work, and it's not all geology as their name might imply, but there's a lot of just physical geography that's been recorded by this agency. There's also a lot of urban stuff, cultural things that have been recorded as well. So they're a good resource for federal data, although honestly, it seems to me like it gets harder and harder to actually track some stuff down year after year as they update some of these websites. And so as we go through here, I'm going to point out some old ways I would access stuff. You're welcome to, in fact, I would encourage you to go to, it's just the nationalmap.gov. Come in here, you can click around on some of this stuff, explore these different pages and so on, but I'm going to look at some specific things here. And to start with, let's see if I click small scale. Yeah, that'll take me right there, which I also have pulled up here on this other tab, but just click through from, again, the national map, clicked on small scale here, brought me to this page. And now scale is something we haven't really dealt with in here, but it's referring to the ratio between something in reality compared to what it is on a map, or in this case, the data itself. Right? Every bit of data we're working with, it's a representation of the world. Right? It's not the actual world, and we've shrunk it down to be able to put it on a computer screen or a piece of paper or whatever. Right? Now, small scale and large scale are two terms. They're relative terms, and they can be a bit confusing. And it's kind of this paradox thing. A small scale map or data set covers a large area, and a large scale data set or map covers a small area. So if we're dealing with the entire United States, say compared to just California, that entire United States data set would be a small scale data set because it covers a large area. And so the national map has some of this small scale stuff. In fact, if I click on this small scale data download, it'll take me here. This is set to a small scale, okay? Meaning it was designed to be shown for maps of very large areas. So if I'm making a map of the entire United States, these would be good data sets. If I'm trying to make something of just my hometown, let's say I'm, for around Antelope Valley College, I'm making a map of Lancaster or Palmdale or something like that, or even in some cases LA, this might not be the best data set to use. Okay, so scale, it's always important to think about at which scale was this stuff designed to be worked with, right? How much can we zoom in and still have it be meaningful? And one thing you'll see with GIS, and we'll play around with it a little bit, you can continue to zoom in as much as you want, but that doesn't necessarily make the data any more accurate, right? Just because I can zoom in doesn't mean I should to get it into that large scale area. And this hopefully will make more sense when we get to it. But click on, from in here we have these different categories, what they call chapters. Let's click on transportation. We're going to look at a bunch of different road stuff today from some different sources. So we'll start here in this transportation area, and we've got a handful of things: airports and ferries, some different roads and things here and there. Go all the way to the bottom, and you'll see we have 3 different roads layers down here at the bottom. A global map, that's kind of for like an ultimate small scale map when you're doing something of the world. And then we have 1 million scale and 2 million scale. All right, so let's go with this 1 million scale. That'll be the largest of these scales that we have. And again, it's a weird relative term, but effectively the smaller this number is, the larger the scale is. Okay, and we're going to right click. You can see the purple here already was playing around with it. Right click where it says road trl010g.gdb.tar.gz. So if you right click on that and then go down to save link as or save target as, I'm using Firefox right now, so yours may look a little different than mine if you're using something else. But I'm just going to right click and go to save link as, and then that gives me the option to pick the spot where I want to save this, right? And I can go into documents, ArcGIS, data exercise, and I can save it right there. Okay, if I didn't do that right click, if I just clicked on this thing, left click once, it's going to pull up this window. This is totally fine. I can save it this way, but it's going to save it directly to my downloads folder. Okay, so if you accidentally do this, or if your browser doesn't allow you to do other stuff, save it to your downloads folder, and then just make sure you move it over to that documents data exercise folder. So again, we keep everything in one place. All right, so I'll cancel that. And then what I can do from here, so I can click on my little download guy, hit this folder here to open this up. I can see it's in Documents, ArcGIS Data Exercise, and I've got my folder right here. Now this has a lot going on with it. This .gz, that's a zipping technology there. It's a compressed folder. And that compression means that it's taken the file and it's effectively squeezed it down so it's a much smaller size. So it's easier to download or send to somebody or whatever. Also, when we're dealing with things like shape files, and the actual file itself is comprised of 6 or 7 individual files, it's good to compress these things because it just keeps everything together, and so you only have to download one thing and you don't lose some of these important files that go with it. Okay? But to access this, we need to right click and we need to unzip it or extract it. Now the best software that's out there to do this and do some of these kind of weird and archaic zipping files here is this program 7-Zip. So if you don't have 7-Zip on your computer and you're trying to extract it or unzip it or whatever it says, when you right click here, if it doesn't allow you to do anything with this, go find 7-Zip online. It's free, open source stuff. Download that. Make sure you're careful from where you're downloading it from. Make sure the site is, reputable. It's not going to load a virus onto your program or your computer or whatever. But get 7-Zip, install that. It'll make your life easier for some of this stuff. And then once you have this, you can just go down to 7-Zip. It gives you these different options. I'm simply going to click extract here. So it'll do that. And now I have a much shorter version of that, but it's this .tar, which is yet again another type of zipping. So they've done this double compression here. So I'm going to right click, go to 7-Zip and extract here. And then finally I've got something, and it's this .gdb. So this is a file geodatabase like I discussed earlier with the data lecture component. So we'll see what that looks like when we actually bring it into ArcMap. And then we've got not only this .gdb here, but we've got this text file and XML file. And if I double click that text file or .txt, in here you can see the word metadata. And so this is information on this Geo Database right here. Right? All sorts of information. Some metadata files are better than others, but it's getting into who made it, the National Atlas of the United States, which is part of this national map USGS conglomerate here. Abstract, it's explaining what it is, the purpose. These data are intended for geographic display and analysis at the national level and for large regional areas. Again, it's getting into that concept of scale. They're saying don't use it for some local small area. Use it for a map of the Western U.S. or the United States in general or something along those lines. Right? Some of this stuff might not mean anything to you. Some of it isn't really that important. For us, it's more for searching for stuff and for software, how software is able to use it. But it's nice to have this stuff so that you at least know what it is and who made it and when it was made and stuff like that. And the XML file should be a similar version of that right there. Okay, now real quick, let's get that down here. I'm going to open up ArcMap. So just your little Windows icon, go into Programs, go down to ArcGIS, click on ArcMap. I'm going to open this up and we'll look in our catalog, and I'm going to show you what this Geo Database looks like. And we'll just keep waiting for ArcGIS to load. There we go. So if I open up our catalog here, one thing to notice is that it brings me to that document / ArcGIS right off the bat. And then it has my data exercise right there, ready to go. Okay, because I just opened it. Now, if you already had this open, and then you went into File Explorer and you created this data exercise folder, and then you came back here into ArcMap, you're probably not going to see that data exercise folder because Arc Catalog doesn't think to go look for new stuff unless you tell it to. Okay, so if you're in here, you don't see what you just created or what you just downloaded or whatever. Always right click up here and hit refresh. Okay, and then it will go in and it will look, and anything new it will actually finally, which is the stupidest thing in the world, right? It should just know to keep looking and refreshing automatically, but you have to tell it, but it'll finally see it there, right? So if you don't see your data exercise, hit refresh. Okay, likewise, if you have data exercise but you don't see your Geo Database, hit refresh, right here to make sure it goes in and really checks for everything. Okay, now here's our text file and our XML file, but the GDB, instead of looking like that file folder, it's this silver cylinder right there. So that's their icon for a Geo Database. And then if you open that up, we have this roads line feature class. Okay, again, has that silvery gray look to it. So it looks very similar to, say, in fact, if I go back in here into South America, you can see the cities, countries, and so on, this lat long. It's kind of that same line icon. It's just a different color. And so the only real benefit with a Geo Database is not when you're doing this. It's kind of silly to have a Geo Database that only has one feature class in it. But let's say I had a Geo Database for the entire US, and that way I could keep roads in there, but I could also have rivers, and I could have lakes, and I could have states, and I could have cities and airports and all sorts of different stuff, and it would just be contained within technically just in this one file. That's where it becomes useful, and there's some cool stuff we can do with it. We'll deal with that later on. For now, we're just going to click and drag. We'll bring this thing into ArcMap. And so as that draws, you can see it's exactly what it said it would be. We've got the US, we've got Alaska up here, Hawaii, Puerto Rico. We can zoom in. Let's just come down here to Southern California. We've got these different routes. If I hit identify, this little blue circle with the white lowercase I can click on any of these, and it will bring up this identify window, and it will give me all the information that's in the attribute table. So I just clicked on a segment of I-5. So the primary name is Interstate 5. There's no secondary name there. You've got a variety of things here. The type name, so it's just the number 5. It's a highway, different codes. And these are all things that should be explained in the metadata if you can't readily understand them. Now, I'm not sure if all this is actually explained in the metadata, but that's one of the things for metadata. It's to explain, what these weird names are for these different file types. Okay, but this is exactly what we wanted to download here, and we got it. Okay, so there's just an example of some of this stuff. And in fact, I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to go in to my where is it, documents, ArcGIS, and data exercise, and I'm just going to call this working. It's a convention I use, which just means this is something I'm working on. Could even do working _ data. I don't really have a name for it. I'm just kind of playing around with stuff. It's not a specific map, but I want to save it so that if something does crash, if something does go wrong, I don't have to go back and reload everything or redo any of the changes I made. It's ready to go. All right, so I got that saved, got my roads there. Fantastic. And I'll minimize this, come back in here. And so that was just one of multiple data files in this small scale data download area here. And I could also, we downloaded the Geo Database. There's also a shapefile version of that same 1 million scale roads. And that's really just up to you, what you want to download, what you want to work with. You can see the file sizes are different. The Geo Database is much smaller. It's kind of a more efficient file type than this much larger shape file. So that might be a concern for you. And as we'll see, we're going to download a few big files, and those can be a pain to work with because it takes your computer so long to draw everything. And if you make any changes, then when it has to redraw it, it takes a long time. So smaller file types or files themselves can be quite useful. But feel free, play around with this other stuff. Download whatever you want. Look at these other things. But that's what this site has. Oh, and I see one thing. This export right here. This is a very old file type. It's called a coverage, or it's this, I think they called it an exchange format or something like that. But it was a way to take these coverages, which were kind of an initial early version of the Geo Database, and easily send them to other people or download these things. So if you ever get one of these things with this E00 designation, it's something you have to mess with in Arc Toolbox. So just be aware of that. There are tutorials online for how to make that stuff work. But with these geodatabases and shapefiles, those formats, very easy to use. Should be able to easily unzip this stuff and bring it into ArcMap. All right, let's close this and this. Now, another thing I want to show before we leave the USGS is to look at some of this historical topographic map stuff, as this is pretty cool. Also, just from the National Map initial website, if you click on like historic topo, it takes you to a few different places. Some of them are much worse than others. This is my favorite place to access these things. So it's this topo view thing, and I'll have the link, like I said, on that links deal, but this is the easiest place to go to actually, get at it, okay, to get these things, to access them. So let's click on download maps now through topo view, and you get, this map that we can zoom into. We can explore different things, or if we know where it is we want to go, we can just type it in right here. And I'm going to type in Los Angeles and hit enter. And I'm just going to do Los Angeles, California specifically. It'll zoom in there, and then it'll give me this list of different topographic maps that exist here that have been scanned. They're things we can bring into ArcGIS. Now we have, like with this first one, it's a map from 1894 of LA, which is pretty cool. It's got a scale of 1 to 62,500. That's how we read this right here. So it's a 1, and then the colon, the 2 dots, and then 62,500. And it means that with this scale, 1 inch on the map is equivalent to 62,500 of those same inches in reality. Okay, and the cool thing with this ratio scale is we can also measure a centimeter on the map, and that 1 centimeter is equivalent to 62,500 centimeters in reality. Okay, and this scale, a way to think about it, is that this 1 to 62,500 is effectively 1 inch equals 1 mile. Okay, pretty close to that. So that's the scale in which this map was drawn. Now we can download a JPEG, which is going to be just a simple image right here. This KMZ, that's a Google Earth file type. We're not going to mess with that stuff right now, but if you wanted to bring this into Google Earth, look at it through there, that's what you'd want to download. GeoPDF is useful if you just want to look at the map itself, but if I'm bringing it into ArcMap, I want to have a TIFF, and this GeoTIFF specifically is saying that not only is it a TIFF image, but it's set up so it already knows where in space it belongs. All right, I'm able to bring it in to ArcMap, and it will put it right where LA is supposed to be. Okay, so that's the one I want to select. So let's see if I right click. Now it looks like I'm going to have to left click this one. So it's not going to let me tell it put it in this specific thing. So I'll just left click, hit save file. I'll let it start to download. And it's thinking right now. There we go. I'm going to go into my downloads. And let's see. I will click and drag, close this. This one is zipped. If we look at that, it's just that .zip. So I'm going to right click, go to 7-zip, extract here. And so it gave me a few things. We have the .tif is the actual map itself. And you can see that's the biggest of these files. The .prj and the .tfw, these are important files that tell you exactly where this thing should go. It's telling you where the different corners of this map belong so that when we bring it in, it gets drawn right where LA should be. So if I didn't have this stuff, it could bring the TIFF in, but it wouldn't know where to put it. But that's what that's for. And then the XML is always some kind of metadata document. All right, so I will open this up. I'm going to go here back to catalog. Again, I'm going to right click and refresh, and that way it knows my to look for something new. And I'm just going to click and drag the TIFF itself, and it's got this grid shape next to it. It's saying this is a raster data set. And so I'll left click and drag. When I release, it gave me this warning. Whenever you get this, typically it's not a big deal. It's just saying, hey, you're bringing something in that's using this different coordinate system than what's already in here. And we're going to talk about this next week. We'll get into this idea of coordinate systems and you know what this actually means. But for now, when you see this, just you can ignore it and you can hit close. You could, in fact, I think I'll do this. Don't warn me again in this session. You can check this. No big deal. It just means as long as I'm working in here for today, it's not going to warn me about this stuff. That's great. But don't hit this don't warn me again ever, because sometimes you want to be warned about this. And we'll see why that is later on when we get to some more advanced stuff in the course. Okay, so we'll just hit that don't warn me again in the session, hit close, and you can see right here under where Los Angeles should be is my map. And I'll click and drag that zoom tool, and I can get closer. And so I can get a sense of Los Angeles in, what was it, 1894, which is pretty cool. We'll zoom in here. Now, because this is a raster image of a map, while this is cool, I can't do that much stuff with this file other than just set it there and look at it, right? These aren't separate layers in here. So we have roads, these little black rectangles and stuff here. Those are actual structures, buildings, houses, offices, whatever it might be. We have some drainages and rivers, some marshland, railroads, all sorts of different stuff, but we can't separate that. I can't really do anything with it. Like I can't say, highlight these roads or turn on these labels or do stuff like that. It's just a snapshot of this map. So that's one of the issues with raster versus vector data when it comes to things like road networks and buildings and stuff like that. Okay, just keep that in mind. But it's kind of cool. I can take this roads layer here. I'm going to pick like a brighter red, make this a little thicker so we can see it. But you can see, where the 10, yeah, Interstate 10 running through here. Of course, these interstates did not exist, or the 101 or the 5 or any of these things weren't there in the 1800s, weren't there until the mid to late 20th century. So we can see some changes. That's already kind of a cool thing, that we can get a sense of what LA initially looked like. We could download a series of these historic maps. There were plenty others that were there, and get a sense of the evolution of the roads, right? Or if we can get some vector data, that would be cool too. Or if someone had digitized these original roads, then we could start comparing them, laying them over one another, or doing some kind of analysis to see this change, this development of the city itself, right? And how it's kind of spread out west as we head out toward Santa Monica right here. Like this is all, in fact, yeah, I'm guessing, now I'm just curious, is this the 405? It is, yeah. So this is UCLA is right there. In fact, yeah, I used to live right over here, which appears to be nothingness at this point. But if you've been down in this part of LA, this is all giant buildings and roads everywhere and people everywhere and all this stuff. But clearly that's changed throughout the years. All right, I'm going to hit save here. Let me pause. Okay, so we got that. Let's go back to our web stuff here. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff that exists here. Again, feel free to play around with it. And, not just here. You can look at your hometown. You can see how that's changed. You can look at other parts of the country, see how that stuff has changed. This is pretty cool stuff that we have, and it's all freely available. And as long as you know what it is you're doing with it, how to access it, what to do once you get it, you can easily use it and do some pretty cool stuff. All right, so we'll keep this in mind. We may use some of this historic stuff later on, but for now, I'm going to close this stuff as well. Now, this next one is what the state of California uses. California used to have a fantastic website, at least I think, and a great place to get GIS data from it. They changed to this Geo Portal thing, and I think it's just garbage. Right now, I find it incredibly frustrating to use, whether it's you search or browse or whatever, but it's what we got. So I'm not thrilled with it, but it's here and it's worth showing you. So it's this portal.gis.ca.gov. They'll have some things like, recent things just to kind of show you some stuff there. Although, frankly, there's a good chance what you're here looking for isn't going to be in here. You can do the search function. And this is this Silverlight thing. This is one issue I have. I've got it installed. But it's fussy because they've made it so, dynamic and quote unquote easy to use. It's just a pain. But if we go in here to browse, this is what we can just get a sense of what's in here. We have in this ISO topic category right here. Yours might be closed. But if you open that up, we've got these different, it's kind of like that chapters idea from the national map, right? So in here, we have a variety of things: agriculture, biology, cadastral, that means property stuff, geological, There's a whole host of things. We're going to go into transportation networks because that's what we're already looking at. So within here, transportation networks, we have a variety of stuff. State highway post miles. Those little mile markers on the side of freeways. We've got, I'm assuming those are points where those things actually are. Highway patrol stuff, Caltrans issues. There's just a whole host of things that are in here. Okay, now this Tiger stuff, this is one thing I want to point out. Tiger, it stands for something, and we're going to go to the census webpage to see it. I always forget exactly what it stands for, although I think topology is the T in there. But these are some pretty decent shape files that exist of things like roads and boundaries, some kind of basic base map stuff that does already exist out there. But one thing I would mention, since we don't see any state of California specific stuff in here, it seems kind of silly to go in and actually download stuff from this specific area, right? We might as well go to the census website itself to be able to get it and get the latest files from the Census Bureau itself, since that's all California is doing. They just took an existing thing and they're giving it to us from here. So with roads, nothing too exciting in here, but you can, if you see something that does interest you, if you hit this details thing, this will take you to the metadata and will show you what's going on here. What are we looking at? Again, saying it's vector digital data, explaining that it's from the Census Tiger database. We'll get some other information here and so on, right? So this is just, you find something, if you're interested in it, back over here, you can go to details and you can access that. And the metadata for the same thing, it's just an uglier XML version of that. So if you needed an XML file, you could download that. But if you just want to read about it on the computer screen, hit details. Okay? And you can look through here. Again, these are good things to explore, see what exists, go through some of this stuff. But unfortunately, as I said, California's page used to be a lot better, a lot easier to use. It's just not the case today. And let's go over here. In fact, I'll close all this. Keep it simple. As I said, if we just go to the Census Bureau itself, that's where we can find some of these Tiger products. Aha, and here you go. Topologically integrated geographic encoding and referencing. I think they just wanted to be able to spell tiger. They thought that was kind of cool. It's simply, these are a lot of vector files for stuff around the country. Okay? And while they're not perfect, they're pretty good, freely accessible, easy to use system. And we'll use some census stuff in a few different weeks, a few different exercises in this course here. But if we go to this Tigerline shapefiles, new 2017 shapefiles, click on there. We have some different years from which we can choose. I'm just going to go with 2017. This should be the latest stuff, but this is kind of like that idea. If you're doing some historical work, you want to see how has a place changed over the last 10 years or 20 years or however far back you can go. This is a pretty cool thing to be able to use. Now, of course, it doesn't go that far back. As you can see here, we go back to the year 2000. We can skip back to 92 for whatever reason, but we can't go to like our 1894 version of Los Angeles and get that those shape files for that moment in time. So it's limited, but it's still kind of a cool thing. And another thing to keep in mind, this kind of goes back to that whole metadata idea. The Census Bureau technically is producing these and updating these, but the way they update this stuff is they'll send local jurisdictions, they'll send a request for updates. I used to get these things where they would send me a big package and they would send these god-awful colored pencils. It was like a magenta, purpley one and a red one, I want to say. And they wanted me to look at the maps and make corrections and fix their work and send it back, which I always hated. Pissed me off because it's like I didn't have enough stuff to do with the stuff I was doing, and the federal government was hoping I would do their work as well. So I think it was outrageous. I'm not going to say whether I actually made those changes or not because I don't want to get in trouble with this stuff, but still, that's how they're updating some of this, and that's why it's not necessarily perfect, because if that local area, that city or county or whatever, if they don't have the resources to help fix the Census Bureau's mistakes, then that stuff might not get fixed. So just be aware of that. These might not be perfect. All right, but let's go to download. We'll just use the web interface because that's going to be a little easier. And then you have select year. If I made a mistake, I could change it in there. And then it's select a layer type. So if we click down on here, we get a handful of things that are available to us. And I'm just going to select roads, because that's what we're playing with. And I'm going to hit submit. And then I have a few options. So primary roads, I can download the national file. So that's like that small scale file that we saw. And so primary roads are going to be those major highways and interstates, the big roads. Primary and secondary, that'll be, the big ones and some of the more kind of intermediate ones, but it won't be every single road, or we can select every single road. And if we do, let's just do that for California. If you do that, you can't do it for the entire state at any one time, right? And so select a county. Right here, I'd have to actually pick Los Angeles, and then I can download that. Okay, whereas this one, I can do all of California. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to download California's primary and secondary roads just so we can compare those to that small scale one that we already downloaded. So I'll click on that. And in fact, let me cancel it. Can I right click? Yeah, that's the problem with these buttons here. So I'm going to left click there, hit save file. And then once that looks ready, going to visit it in there. Click and drag this guy here. Unzip it. You can see how this unzipping thing, this is pretty common. That'll put all this, it's a shape file, so we've got all those files that have the same name and different extensions. That's all there. Let's go back to ArcMap, hit catalog. Remember, I need to hit refresh. I'm going to bring in this precise roads thing. Haha, check this out. So let's look around good old Santa Monica. We've got like the 10 right here. It doesn't actually say if it's eastbound or westbound, but we've got the two separate sides of the 10, right? Or the Santa Monica freeway. So there's a little more in terms of detail here. You can see how it kind of runs through Santa Monica. This green line, let me pull this up. We'll make this one like purple. Wait, I want this. That'll be bright. So that kind of greenish color there. It does not match the small scale roads, but it does seem to match a little better this underlying historical map. Now, this does not mean that the historical topo map that's underneath here is necessarily truer or more accurate or anything like that, but it is interesting to see how much closer these bluish green lines are to these red lines. So that's something to think about too. If you're bringing data sources from multiple places, you want to make sure it works together. It looks good together, and that you don't have to go in and edit things and tweak stuff and so on. So that's just an interesting thing there, where these national roads, it's kind of the scale issue, where if I'm making a map of the whole country, it'll probably look good. If I'm getting in here to something like West LA, it's not going to look as sharp. And especially if I start to compare it with some other stuff that I want to overlay with this. I'm going to hit save right here. That's how that one worked. Now let's go back here. Let's just go ahead, while we're at it, let's download these LA County roads. And this may very well take a while. See the slow little status bar up here, because it's a big file. I mean, if we're talking of all the roads in all of Los Angeles County, that's a lot of stuff, right? So it'll be cool to have this, but it's also big. It's going to use a lot of resources on our computers here. So it's completed. Okay, and again, we'll bring this stuff over here, close that, unzip it, and let's take a look at that in ArcMap. So that was just roads. And as you start to learn some conventions too, 2017, that's the year. This 06 means California, and the 037 means LA. So if you work with this stuff enough, you can start to kind of read through some of this, the code that's in here. And there you go. Here is every modern road in Los Angeles. Let's go back to Santa Monica and just look at this. And so these don't line up quite as nicely. Let's make this a little easier to see here. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. We could have had some of these roads actually be adjusted over the last century. It could be a case that, yeah, this just isn't, this map isn't placed exactly where it should be. It'd be that the map wasn't really drawn that accurately to begin with. You know, there are a lot of things at work, but pretty interesting just to see that, again, from a history perspective, see how things have changed. And you can see how comprehensive this roads file is, but also makes it a challenge to work with, especially if you try to label this stuff. It can be quite challenging. So right now I'm going to uncheck that. I'll hit save again, and let's go back to the web. So we'll close this, and then I want to show just one other source, one other place for stuff. And these aren't the only spots where we're going to see data and find it out there on the web. We'll do some stuff next week. I have some ideas of what we can do to start to play around with some stuff. So we'll see some other sources, but this is another really good one to just have saved as a bookmark if you're in the greater Los Angeles area. And if you're not, if you live in some other county, some other state, or you're interested in some other place, there's a good chance that that county or city or state has their own GIS web page. Most agencies and jurisdictions have these things these days. Some are much better than others, and luckily LA County, they've done a pretty good job. It can be kind of tricky to figure out how to use theirs initially, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. And so it's this egis3.lacounty.gov is the main site, this GIS data portal. And portal is really just this kind of term that gets used quite a bit about you go to this one spot and it'll point you to different agencies, and kind of the idea is this would be the first place you go to, and then you're able to find everything that you want. And in here, I already kind of clicked through to it because it could be tedious to find some of this stuff. But they have the OpenStreetMap data for LA County. And OpenStreetMap, as they describe right here, is built by a community of mappers. And that's one thing I like about LA County stuff, is that they have a lot of that metadata right here, right off the bat. So you know what it is you're getting into. But this is kind of like the Wikipedia for GIS data. It's a cool concept, and it's just anybody can sign up for an account, can get in, and can update stuff, can change things, whether stuff has changed because of new development, whether stuff was wrong to begin with. And we have OpenStreetMap stuff for all over the world. And this is a cool way for geographers to help out when we have disasters around the world. When a hurricane comes in or an earthquake hits or something like that, this is what rescue workers use to try to get to rural areas that have been hard hit, right? This is the idea that this is the that GIS information will tell you how to get to a place in some remote part of the world. And so geographers will get in, look at satellite imagery, compare that to existing vector data for roads and transportation networks, and make sure everything matches so that rescue workers know what they're getting into. And you can check out this whole OpenStreetMap thing. They've got .org. You can see it, and you probably have seen some of this stuff already. You just don't even realize it. So it's a great source of data. And so they point to this Geo Fabric or Fabrik or what, it's a German thing, where that you can actually download this stuff. So if I left click here, oh, that was the wrong one. Let's see. I want, okay. As is, hold on, I'm reading through. Oh no, it's up here. Sorry. The thing is download, you dummy. Yeah, right here. If I right click on this, see if I hit save link as, no, that's just going to take me to the website. So I'll left click here. Okay, so this is in this German site. Let's see, I'm just kind of reading through. So yeah, this California latest free.shp.zip, so zip, that's going to be shapefiles. That's what we want. And it was last modified 23 hours ago. Now it's a big file, over a gig, but that's pretty cool what they have here. So I'm going to right click this. Now it's save link as, and I can save this into my documents, ArcGIS data exercise. I'll save it right here. And it's probably going to take a while. So I'm going to pause this video. If you start downloading it, go have a snack or whatever and come back. But when I resume, we'll unzip it and we'll look at it. So hang tight. Okay, so I've sat through the downloading process. I went ahead and just unzip this stuff. And so we have here now in our catalog all these GIS _ OpenStreetMap, OSM, buildings, land use, natural, all sorts of different things. And I'll just click and drag roads, bring that in, and this takes a while to draw. And what you can see in the lower right corner is this globe icon that's spinning around. And so that's saying I'm working, I'm trying to draw all this up, but there's a lot going on. Now it's frustrating for a lot of us when we click and drag stuff over. We want it to happen instantly. We want the immediate gratification. You got to be patient with GIS and with ArcMap when we're dealing with these big files. Because ArcMap now has a thing in it. I say now, it's probably like 10 years old at this point. But in one of the updates, what they finally did was they made it so that if you clicked your mouse anywhere in here, it would stop drawing stuff. And that's because a lot of us got frustrated if we're going along, we're making a map, and we realize we make a mistake or we need to make some change or whatever, but we're stuck waiting for, say, like a roads layer like this to just continue to draw. So this kind of safety thing was we could left click anywhere in here and it should stop drawing. Now, if you accidentally do that, you didn't mean to, and now you can't see anything, down here in the lower left, we have this refresh button here. Click that, and it'll redraw, and just make sure you don't touch anything until it's done, until that little globe stops spinning and disappears. Okay? But we can see in here, there's a lot of stuff. And so this was tested by folks, looked at, tweaked, changed. Now, I don't know how much has been done, but let's actually zoom into this Santa Monica area. Again, we're going to have to wait a little bit as it's thinking, getting ready to draw. And again, just be patient as it goes through here, because it's worse if you're not patient. Yeah, this is killing me too. Let's go, computer. And there's a lot of interesting stuff I'm seeing in here. Things that, look kind of mysterious. Like, I don't know if it's driveways we're looking at. Weird curving things. Looks like we might have some boardwalk stuff going along the beach there. So there's a lot in here. It's going to look different from that tiger stuff that we have. I mean, some of the stuff's going to be the same. Looks like in this case, the 10, it's the two actual separate sides of the 10 of the freeway itself, as opposed to that one from that initial small scale thing. So there's a lot there. And what I could do too, if I didn't know what this stuff was, in fact, I'm going to turn this off just so I don't have to wait for it. I'm also going to turn off that map right there, and we just uncheck it so we don't have to look at it. I'm going to add, this may or may not work at this scale right here, but I'm going to go to this add data button and hit left click on the little drop down guy. Okay, so not on the actual diamond with the plus sign, but the drop down. And I'm going to go to add a base map. And this is a quick way to throw some stuff in here. I don't recommend doing this, often, unless you just need to kind of get a quick idea of something, because there are better ways to do this. But you can take from their servers, the ESRI servers, some of this imagery right here. Okay, I'll click add. So it's going to put in this satellite or aerial photo right where I'm looking. I'll wait for this one to draw. Aha! See, and I'm already getting answers. All these weird curving things here. It looks like we've got a park right here. Those are pathways or, trails or whatever. Right? In fact, let's turn this on now. And oh, shoot, and I forgot. Well, of course, we're going to have to wait. But it should hopefully make more sense what we're actually looking at. So we start to draw it. You can see where some of these lines line up. So yeah, we've got the pier there. And you can see the little, boardwalk pathways along the water. We've got the actual parking lot aisles and stuff drawn in there. There's our little trail network showing up there. So there's a lot. And this may be too much for what we're doing. Or maybe this is the perfect amount because we want that zoomed in, large scale map. We want to show a city block in as much detail as possible. So if that's the case, then this OpenStreetMap stuff looks pretty good. This is a lot of the detail that we want to in corporate. If we want to look at a larger section of Los Angeles or Southern California in general, we don't want to do that because it's going to get too busy. It's going to get too ugly. We don't need to see every little pathway in Southern California if we just want to see, say, the main freeways and things like that. Okay, so there's a very quick introduction to some of the material that's available online. You're freely able to download, bring into ArcMap, and start to play with. This will become important with the final project for the class. You're going to need to be able to go out and find some of your own stuff and be able to do some things with those data sets that you pull in. So we'll revisit this skill set down the road. But for now, I just wanted to introduce this stuff to you guys. So to get credit for going through this, learning how to do it, all I want you to do is to have downloaded these different files that I did. So if you're following along, great, you've already got this stuff. If you're just watching it, but in do this, go back, download these very things, and then come into the layout view. And I don't really care what you put in here, what your final product will be. In fact, I'm going to, because I'm getting sick of it, I'm going to uncheck this OpenStreetMap thing. There we go. So I don't have to have it keep drawing. I'm even going to take off this base map, go back to my historic map, but do something like this, right? And how about this? Let's go into my drawing toolbar. Get that rectangle in here somewhere. I'll draw that there. I'm going to resize a few things. So anal I can be. I'm going to make the most of the page here. I'm also going to get rid of this god-awful yellow and gray. Say, okay, I'm going to put this somewhere in the corner. And I would just give it a title that says, what it is we're looking at. Historic 1894 map of Santa Monica and overlay of modern roads. Something like that. Throw a north arrow in, throw a scale bar in. Give me some information on here. I don't really care. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I just want to see that you downloaded this stuff, you unzipped it, you put it in here, and you can, practice more of this layout stuff. Once you're done with that, go to File, Export Map, and export this thing as a PDF like you did previously, like with our South America map. And then find the appropriate place in Canvas, upload this thing, 10 points, just like that. All right? All right. Best of luck, people.